Hi, Katie. Welcome to your Human Design System Foundation reading. So I've got some presentation slides here, and the first one is really just a summary of your design and some of the aspects that you'll find in your human design chart. So we'll be going through all of these in more detail during the reading, and there we have your chart in the middle. And on the next slide, this is what we'll be focusing on for the rest of the reading. So this is your human design system chart that I've created with the licensed software that I have, Maya Mechanics Imaging. So the first thing we talk about in a human design reading is what is your type? And as you already know, you're a projector type. And what this means is really there's 4 types in the human design system. And what it means to have a projector type is that you're about 20% of the population that's here to have a special role, more in guiding other people in life rather than necessarily being the one who's in there building and creating and doing all the grunt work. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't do that at some points in your life. It just means that it's not really what your primary purpose is, and it's not necessarily the things that are going to give you the most feeling of success in your life. So for you, your relationships with others and how you can guide others is really what's going to bring you the most sense of success. And it's when you're really not recognized by others in your life that when that feeling of bitterness kind of starts to creep in, and you basically just start to not feel good inside. So the other thing about type is it's also about aura. So each of the 4 different types have a different aura. And for projectors, the aura is a different shape, for example, to a generator's. So our aura is about 2 arms lengths in width all around us. So if you think about where you are now, it's 2 arms lengths down and above your head and to the left and to the right. It's kind of like this big bubble that each of us live in. But our bubbles have kind of different functions and different properties. And for a projector, your aura has this ability to really focus in on the G center of whoever it is that you're with. So that G center is the yellow colored diamond in the middle of the chart. It's approximately around someone's chest area. And your aura, when you're with somebody else, can really get kind of pointy and focused in on the other person. So it's not so much of a big hug aura like a generator aura. And for example, the manifest aura is very resistant. And it's kind of referred to as closed and repelling. So it's kind of hard to get into a manifestor's aura, and reflectors have a different aura function again. It's more like a sampling aura. So they take people in a different way. But because projectors are really here to be the guides of other people's energy, and it's really, that's the essential. You're here to be a guide for the energy in the world and, you know, for those people around you. Having this kind of penetrating and focused aura is really helpful because you really easily get in and get a key sense of what is going on for the other person. So that's a description of the project type. Again, you know, it's your purpose is your ultimate purpose is really here to be a guide for others. You don't have the kind of consistent energy to really create and build things on an ongoing basis through your life. Like I said, it's not to say that you won't be doing those, involved in those activities at some point, but ultimately you're really here to kind of be the one who guides it. Once you've been recognized as somebody who has those skills, you'll be invited in to guide the energy. So that brings us to the strategy of projectors. So each type has a strategy for making decisions about what you're going to be involved in life that comes naturally out of your purpose and out of this aura. So you're really here to, your strategy is to wait for invitations in life. And what that is about really is that you need to be recognized. Because you have this kind of pointy focused aura, you really need to be recognized and invited in by other people. Otherwise, the interaction's going to feel kind of weird. The other person's going to feel uncomfortable, and they're going to be focused on their discomfort and not really focused on what you can offer, because they haven't really recognized you and invited you in. So this is really, it's about life's big invitations. So it's about who to be in a relationship with, what work projects to be involved in, and the places to live. They're the really big decisions that we make in life. Who to be with and where to be, and everything kind of comes out of that. So you're not waiting for an invitation multiple times a day. This is the kind of invitation is going to be something big that comes, that kind of, it's a lot about the people for projectors that you're going to be with and that you're going to be around and that you're going to be guiding. So having that invitation and really having that recognition and being invited in is super important for you. And the way, once you've had an invitation, because you'll get lots of invitations potentially in your life, but the question is, how do you know which ones are correct for you? How do you know which one's the right ones for you? And they're not just somebody that sees your energy and just wants it for some kind of reason of their own, that doesn't really respect you and what you can bring. And the way each of us makes these decisions is with our personal authority. It's also called inner authority. So you have the initial strategy of, hey, like, okay, rather than jumping into everything and feeling under a lot of pressure to initiate things and make things happen, for you, it's just about, okay, let's take a step back and see who really recognizes me. Was I invited, and is the invitation still there? Because that's the other thing for a projector. The invitation can kind of come to a natural end, just like relationships and projects all come to a natural end. And you'll just kind of feel it, that it's just the energy for you to be there and for other people accepting you and wanting you to be there. It just will have changed. But the way that you really can rely on for you to make decisions about which direction, like which invitations to accept, and which people to be with, is what we call your splenic authority. And this is because you have this center here, that I'm circling here on the left, the brown triangle here. You have this colored in, which means that you have it defined. It is something that's operating in you that has been there since the day you were born, and it'll be there until the day you pass out of this life. So it's really consistent and reliable in you. And the thing about the splenic center, the spleen, is it's an in the moment awareness. So it's always kind of scanning the environment to know and recognize what is healthy for you in that moment. So it speaks, but it only speaks in the moment. So it's really important with splenic authority to pay attention to any physiological sensations that you have. And you may already really be familiar with this in your own life because it's a pretty conscious process in you. So it's like if you walk into a store, or you're going somewhere and you just suddenly have some kind of feeling or physiological sensation that something's not right. It's important to really pay attention to that and really listen to that, because that is your kind of splenic radar telling you that something's off, that something's not going to be healthy for you about this situation. So this, although your strategy is kind of a big picture thing, your splenic authority is something that you can use on a sort of day-to-day basis. It's certainly something that when the invitation comes in from somebody, if you're invited into a work project, into a relationship, it's really important to go with your first intuitive response. The sort of in the moment recognition for you of whether this feels good or whether your intuitive system is just saying, like, warning bells, sending you warning bells. And it's only going to speak in that moment. So you really are the type of person that can make spontaneous decisions, and you really need to trust those spontaneous decisions. And it's probably equally as hard to trust them when the answer is yes, as it is to trust them when the answer is no, because your mind's always going to get in there and start talking pretty soon after you've had that response. So the experiment for you and the learning is to really get very familiar with what that feels like for you, that in the moment physiological sensation that gives you the sense of, whether whatever you're being invited to resonates with you. Does it feel healthy? Do you feel recognized? Do you feel like people see you? And that immediate response is always going to be followed shortly by the mind jumping in and saying something. And it might agree with your splenic response, or it might not. But the important thing is to begin to trust that splenic response, because the mind is always going to have something to say. You could have a decision and it's going to have all its pros and cons about that decision, and it'll come down, if it doesn't trust your splenic response, and it's like, you've got to be kidding me, if your splenic response was like a no, this is not right, I don't feel recognized, this doesn't feel healthy, and your mind's like, hey, but what about this and what about that, and this is the opportunity we've been waiting for, the invitation we've been waiting for, it's going to kind of really try hard to convince you not to trust your intuition. So we'll get a little bit more into what it might say in the next few minutes. But basically what we've talked about so far, so we've got your type as a projector, and that naturally leads to the strategy of waiting a bit more in life rather than trying to jump in and make things happen, because that's what we're all taught to do, that we have to make our life happen. And basically, for most of us, it's just in order to be secure, in order to feel like we're going to survive and we're going to be looked after. The mind is always looking for, what should I be doing next? What should I be setting up? I better go out and do that. But with the human design system says for projectors, just stop, take a step back, and just wait to see what the invitations are, what the things that you're currently involved in, what do they feel like? Do they feel correct for you or not? And the waiting just becomes part of the learning process of really how you operate, how you function, how you make decisions using that splenic intuition that you have. So yeah, we have that strategy of waiting, and then when it comes to actually you get an invitation, the way that what you can trust inside you to make those decisions is that splenic in the moment intuition, that physiological sensation. However you discover that works for you. So let's talk a little bit about these open centers. And these are called, or the white ones, the ones that aren't colored in, we call them open. It just means that they're kind of like receptors to life coming in. So it comes in and it flows through you, and you get to, you get to experience life in a multitude of different ways coming in through these centers, and you get to be really wise about them. The thing is that when we're very young, usually in our first 7 years, because we don't understand or we aren't taught about life being about experiences, and that there are certain things that come through that we can let go, and we don't know what it is that is consistently operating within us, the parts of us that are what we call defined, then the mind starts to hang on to all the ways it finds to deal with these experiences. So it tries to hang on to the really good ones, and it really wants to get rid of the experiences that it found unpleasant. So the mind develops all these mental strategies about how to make decisions in life. And there are layers and layers and layers of decisions and beliefs that are formed over the course of our lifetime, the initial dynamics of which are laid down in the first 7 years of life. But we just keep, the more mature we are and the more the mind develops, we just keep building and building on those. So you have 6 open centers. So that's a lot of conditioning. And we all have ways that we're conditioned. But you have this real kind of those 3 defined centers as a strong contrast to the 6 open centers that you have. So where your mind is going to try and go when you start trusting your strategy and your splenic inner authority is these white open centers and their themes. So particularly like the sacral, this is about not knowing when enough's enough. So this might be like when you're out somewhere and your splenic authority might speak and say, time to go home. Or you just get that feeling like, I'm done, I've had enough. But your mind really likes being around the energy of generators. So it's going to give you arguments for why you should stay and why you should stay in that generator aura. You also have an open root center. The open root center is about pressure. So you really do take in pressure and stress from other people, and you think that it's yours. So the mind wants to get rid, it feels really uncomfortable. The mind wants to get rid of that stress and pressure. So its key thing is, let me get everything done. If I just get everything done, I can get to the bottom of this pressure, and then the pressure will be gone. Like, get to the bottom of this pile of things I feel pressured to do, and then the pressure will be gone. But the reality is that for you, that pressure, that sense of pressure will always be there in one way or another. And it's not about you. It's actually what you're about what you're taking in from other people. So that's something that that's something to watch for as well. When if your mind's like saying something like, I just need to get all these things done so I can get rid of the pressure. And then the big one here, probably one of your biggest conditioning centers here is this open solar plexus or emotional center. So 50% of the population have this defined. And what that means is that when you're around a person that has an emotional wave, you are taking in that emotional wave. And if they're up in their emotional wave, it feels great. But if they're down, or they're feeling melancholy, then you feel that too. But with all these open centers, everything is magnified for people who have it, for when you're taking it in from somebody else. So the big strategy we learn as children for when we're being around a defined emotional wave is let's not rock the boat. Let's make sure we don't do anything that would make these people upset and that would potentially have that emotional wave coming through us. So not only do we have strategies for when we feel that the low emotional wave coming through that we want to make other people feel better, but we often have strategies to try and prevent any of that happening to begin with. So that's the first of 3 of the 6 open centers. And then we come up here to the throat center. So this is open, and this center is about taking action, but it's also a lot about speaking. So you're really here to have a lot of wisdom about taking action in the world, but also about what people say and the genuineness of the way people talk and the kind of the way that people are good at conceptualizing and describing the world. So your natural state is actually to be quiet and not to be the one who's speaking. And the open throat center tends to really enjoy that really relaxed state of not having to speak. It's just not something that's a really necessarily a strong impetus in you when you're by yourself, is to want to speak. But this can lead to sort of using your voice to trying to attract attention, because that's another strategy that we learn early as children. That, hey, when we're around other people and we magnify their throat center, and in whatever way the other person's throat center is defined, then we think that we can use that to attract attention and to draw attention to ourselves, because the open throat center, I have an open throat center as well, because we do tend to be quiet when we're in groups and not speak a lot, and that's not recognized in society very much. Yeah, we have this, we develop these strategies, and a lot of them are about using our voice or sometimes our actions to try and attract the attention of others. And it's a lot of the time, these conditioning influences are kind of unconscious until we start paying attention to them. And that's what this human design system is really, one of the things human design system is really helpful for, is just bringing attention to these basic conditioning patterns, and really recognizing which ones are the strongest ones for you. And these 6 ones that you have open are the strongest ones for you. So the two triangles we have here at the top, this is the Ajna center, which is it's the center for conceptualizing. And then we have the head center, which is about inspiration. So these two tend to work a lot together, and they can be really wonderful to have adventures through. And the beauty and the wisdom behind these two centers is really being able to experience a lot of different ideas and ways of conceptualizing life, and also ways of being inspired. So you're the kind of person that can have the open mind in the sense, not the general sense that we talk about, which is sort of being open to other people's ideas, but really being able to flip from one way, one lot of inspiration to the other, and to be able to see value in all of those, because it's coming through you, um, and you're magnifying it, you can kind of really strongly take it in. And it also means that you can tell basically who knows what they're talking about and who doesn't, who's really inspiring and who's not. And that's really something that's kind of fun to start playing with as you get to know this openness in you more, and get to kind of separate yourself, to realize when you're having that conceptualization and inspiration as something that is coming from somebody else, because it's never going to be something that's really consistent in you. As you get older, and particularly to that kind of age that you're coming to now, you'll be able to have a lot of wisdom in these centers that you can pass on to other people from all the different things that you've experienced, because you really do have that incredible mental flexibility. So that's the open centers. And what I've tried to talk about is the way that our mind as young children develops strategies to deal with this openness, because we don't understand what it is. We don't understand it's actually coming from outside of us, and that's okay. And it's okay to let it come in and let it go. And some of it, like I said, we really don't like. Particularly for you, those lower three open centers, being around people that are putting out a really icky emotional wave, or being around really frustrated and stuck generator energy, or around people that are putting themselves under a lot of pressure. And a lot of the time for generators, it'll be that root center and the sacral center that are defined together. So you're getting this kind of frustration, putting myself under pressure energy from other people. But knowing, key part is starting to know now, and to start to observe it, and to see that it's not you, and to start to see how your mind's been conditioned by those, and how it's going to try and talk you out of trusting your spontaneous intuition, your response in the moment, which is what you really can rely on. So the other thing about your chart is that you might have noticed in some of the descriptions, it's what's called a single definition. And this just means that, as I said before, like you have this G center, ego center, and splenic center all connected together. And that is like your one big soup of definition of who you are, of what you can rely on, in contrast with these open centers. So there's nothing, some people have parts of themselves that are split off, and they need certain connections and certain relationships to be able to get all the energy flowing through. And that can have its pros and its cons, because those people can get reliant. And you might have people in your life that you connect up their what we call their splits for. And they can be sometimes, they can come to rely on you, and they're not sure why. They need you to be around. and they can't really necessarily, they might make up stories why, but they're not really sure. But the thing about being a single definition is that you take things in quickly, because you don't have a need to have the time to process things with other people. So when your splenic center and the whole of your design, like the theme of your design and some of the other things I'm looking at, like you take things in so quickly, and that splenic intuitive response is going to come fast and strong, I suspect, in you, and you're going to be conscious of it because there isn't, really anything else, any other process that you need to go through to have that come out in a healthy way. You do have the counterpoint of the 6 other open centers and the conditioning that they bring, but also the huge potential wisdom. So that's what being a single definition is really about. Like I said, I'm a single definition as well. We take things in really quickly. We don't really need others in that same way that other designs would. And being a 6-2 as well, there's certainly a theme in your chart about not really, being able to be independent, not necessarily needing other people, which is interesting because as a projector, you do need to make sure you are around the right people that recognize you. So it's that initial having the invitation and accepting the correct invitations that kind of sets you going on your way. And then once you're on your way with this, with whatever invitation you've accepted into, whatever the environment is, you're kind of an independent agent in that you can just be doing your thing. And then you do need to be asked about the small things, so that you have your energy respected. And like I said, those day-to-day kind of decisions, that's where your splenic authority comes in really useful as well. You don't have to pause and think like 10 times during the day, am I being recognized? Do I feel invited? That's where you can just trust that kind of in the moment splenic intuition. This is healthy, this is not, it's correct for me to be doing this now, or it's not. The time to really kind of step back is when you feel that invitation, that recognition overall is just not there anymore. And that's the time when you might need to sort of step back and potentially, wait for something else to happen to see what your intuition is to the small things, and then slowly you're going to see the big picture of whether you're, the invitation and the recognition is there anymore, or something really big might happen where you're like very clearly uninvited. That sometimes does happen. But sometimes it's more of a dance with the energy as well. So the next thing to talk about is your profile. So and a lot of people talk a lot about profile in human design. So you have a 6-2 profile. The 6 is taken over here from the personality Sun Earth line 6. So you've got your personality Sun is in gate 26, line 6. Your personality Earth is in gate 45, line 6. And over in the design, your design Sun is in gate 6, line 2. And your design Earth is in gate 36, line 2. So this is the 6 on the top, the conscious, with the 2 underneath as unconscious. So profile is a bit like the role that we take in life, because somebody else could have a very similar design to you and they could have splenic authority, but they might have a different profile. They might be a 2-4 or a 5-1, which just gives them a different role in terms of the way that they interact with life and they interact with people. So the 6-2 is really an interesting one because anyone with a 6th line in their profile has what we call this tripartite life process. And that's basically that you have a life process, which once I describe it, I'm sure you'll recognize that for the first 30 years of your life, you feel like it's very subjective experience. There's a lot of trial and error, particularly for you in terms of the way that your mind is trying to figure out how life works, and how your social relationships work, and who you are, who you try and influence, because a lot of your definition is about being able to influence people to go in a unique direction. So there might have been a lot of trial and error around that kind of thing, particularly in your first 30 years. And there can be a real sense of like, what is going on? Like, I can't figure things out. I keep making mistakes and nothing seems to work. And then around your Saturn return, which is when Saturn returns to the same place it was when you were born, which is around age 28 or 29, life starts to change and you start to develop more of a objective perspective, which can feel like you're a little bit more aloof or more distanced from people in your life. And it's in your aura as well. So it kind of can feel like something that's happening that you don't really have a lot of control over. It's just a different phase that you're moving into, which is necessary. It has Ra Urahu also called it or described it as like going up on the roof. So for the first 30 years, you're kind of down in everything. And then after age 28, you sort of go up to sit on the roof of, where you can look out and see over everything. And it goes for 20 years until you're around 50, which is the Chiron return, when Chiron returns to where it was when you were born. So you're in this phase now, at age 36, and I would imagine, and it's different for everybody, and you have 4 kids, so that just kind of changes everything. But you may be able to sort of identify with this basic change of feeling and maybe even wanting to be more aloof and objective and just not really wanting to be down in the trial and error and the drama and everything like that anymore. And this is natural and it's a good thing to recognize, and it's good to know that you are in this process, particularly as a mom who has kids. It's really helpful to know that you're in this stage of your life but they're still in the first stage of their life. So it's kind of a real balancing act between you needing to have whatever it is that you need, you feel that, it is correct for you to need, maybe more space, not wanting to be involved in as many things at this point in your life. Also, it can be like a process of refinement. So what we're not taught is that trial and error process in the first 30 years is really essential, because it's a learning and discovery process. And for a lot of people who come into human design after age 30 who have a 6th line profile, they kind of psychologically didn't get that message. And they got the message of you're just failing and you're making a whole lot of mistakes, and why can't you get it right? You're, choosing the wrong invitations, and yeah. So at age 50, this is where the two phases of your life come together. And Ra called it a flowering. He also called it coming off the roof. Basically, it's an integration of the first two phases, the objective phase and the subjective phase. And what that looks like, you can look around and look at other 6-2s and people with 6-line profiles and talk to people who have who are on the other side of 50 to see how they describe it. But nobody can really tell you what it's going to be like for you, because the whole point of the 6th and the 6th line is it's a role model. So it's about being really unique and uniquely you. And you're in your story and your environment with your people. So it's not going to be the same for you as it is going to be for me or for anybody else. So that's the really important thing to know about this, 6-2, about your profile. Particularly important because you have a 6. But yeah, the other part is that you have this second line on the bottom in the design part, which is really about your body's intelligence. And you are a natural. So part of what you're here to be recognized for is what you're naturally good at. It's kind of like you don't have to spend a lot of time digging into things to find the foundation. And how you might deliver your guidance is, some level of social skills are probably important for everybody, but that's not the point for you. It's just a natural thing. It's there and it's going to come out. And you develop that naturalness by just being yourself. The second line is also often described as the hermit because they just like being on their own and doing their own thing. That's what's natural. And it's other people who see the second line doing their own thing, kind of in a way being a hermit. That's what people will see, and that's what people will want to invite. So using the way that what to be involved in, what to be naturally doing is through your splenic authority. And that just applies to anything from any kind of professional work that you might be doing, your parenting, and in your relationships. I lost my train of thought, sorry. Just if you get a splenic response, somehow a physiological sensation that something is not healthy for you in the moment, then you can just stop doing it. And if it's feeling good for you, then you can keep doing it. And if that means that you're relatively alone over somewhere doing your own thing, then that's okay. And this is the unconscious part of you that you find harder to recognize, but other people will see from the outside. So that's how the calls come. That's how the invitations come, because people are going to see that from the outside. And just to say as well, finally, about the 6-2 profile, that it really is a process for you. So that 6th line can take 50 years to develop. And again, that's what it's not highly valued. That's still in our 30s and 40s. We're still really developing our objective perspective and our personal authority in life, in terms of what we have to be able to share a value with others, because it really just takes a long time to develop that. And we'll get back to that, what that specific themes of that specifically for you. Actually, we're going to do that next.